mean, there's still a game tonight, you know? There's still a quarter of the season left. And believe it or not, they do matter, including tonight. I'll explain. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of the other two non-performing teams in town, the Steelers and the Pirates. Penguins versus Flyers is a 7:08 p.m. face-off at PPG Paints Arena. I'll be there covering it, along with our beat writer Taylor Haas for DK Pittsburgh Sports. And no, I'm not looking forward to it either. Who could? Who's walking into that building tonight? Unless you've never been there before. This is the first hockey game of your life, and you're seeing the arena. You're seeing the banners. You're seeing the Mario statue. You're down there against the glass for warm-ups. Okay, different. But otherwise, imagine you're a season ticket holder, and you're going for the, 20th or 25th time on the season. And you're getting dragged into that place. And only by the money commitment that you already made. It's no fun. This isn't fun. And even if you're one of those who's comfortable or even happy with just projecting into the future and saying, ooh, 15 picks in the first 3 rounds over the next 3 years. This is going to be awesome. Total rebuild. This is what I've been looking forward to. If you're one of those, great for you. But it does not change what has to happen on the ice. Mike Sullivan had a message for his players yesterday in Cranberry after a brief practice up there. And he encapsulated that, I thought, pretty powerfully afterward.
When you're in situations like we're in, that's not easy. It's not easy for any one of us. You know, these guys have a lot of pride. They care an awful lot about what's going on. We all do. The coaching staff does as well. So, but if you're asking me, are we gonna hang our heads because we're in a tough spot? The answer is no. We're going to dig in. We're going to fight. We're going to try to get better. We're going to take the game in front of us, and we're going to try to put our best game in the ice and see where it goes. That's the only solution. That's the only approach. There's no other alternative. And it requires a certain level of resilience and a certain attitude in order to make that happen. The good news about that is that is completely within all of our control. That's a conscious choice we make when we come into the rink every day. And that's the conversation we have with the group. And that's what, quite honestly, that's what the expectation is.
I hate to keep sounding like I always agree with everything that he says, but he puts it really well. He puts it as well as any coach or manager I've ever covered. That, what he just said, very much applies. Here's how that was taken by at least one of their most prominent players in Ricard Raquel.
Yeah, I think just getting ready for the next game. Like we know that we didn't play good enough last game, but we get another shot at playing that tomorrow. So, definitely have to come out with the right mindset and just be ready to play hard.
So why does it matter? Why is it important? Why would it be relevant if the Penguins beat the Flyers after losing the past 2 to the Flyers in the past month alone? When it's not going to do anything in the standings, it's not going to do anything in anybody's level of belief that they can make something out of this season, why would it matter? Here's what I've got. This franchise has to be made of stronger stuff, or it will sink to depths that you can't even fathom right now, that I can't even fathom right now. I'm always using the same 2 examples of how this can go really wrong. And I feel a little guilty about that because they're not the only 2 teams that it's ever happened to, but they're so fresh in the consciousness that I can't help it. The Red Wings and the Blackhawks. And you knew those were the 2 that I was going to cite. The Red Wings had that amazing run with all these Hall of Famers, and they had a little bit of a second life with that next group. The Penguins kind of ended that in 2009, not all the way, but kind of. The Hawks had their run with Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, all those guys. And then they just lost, and then they just kept losing. Then they became okay with losing, and then they reached the really tragic point that they even get themselves a Connor Bedard, and they're still the absolute worst. If you heard 2 nights ago the comments that Seth Jones, their number one defenseman, had to say, he said, this team hasn't progressed at all. We're the same team now that we were in game 1. It made some headlines out there. If you go back to earlier this season when Steve Yzerman made the coaching change in Detroit, bringing in Todd McClellan, he said, I don't get it. I look around. I look at the talent that we have here, whether it's Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider on the back end, and we don't seem to advance. We don't seem to make it through to that next level. Well, the Red Wings are in a position now where they're contending for a playoff spot. We'll see if they end up making anything of it. You can't let the rut just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, if all you heard out of everything that I said was that Detroit made a coaching change and everything got better, that's not what's happening here. It's just not. I know there's people that love to make a sport of Sullivan's status. He's not going anywhere. The reason for that is he's not the problem. We will respectfully, I hope, disagree on this. There are times when he's part of the problem. That's true of everybody in the entire operation. But when I look at how hard this team was playing, how hard they were competing for the better part of this month, in a lot of cases dominating opponents that, in all honesty, were a lot better than them on paper, I'm not wondering about the coach. Now, that said, this is going to be some rare air for him, for Sidney Crosby, for Evgeny Malkin, for Chris Letang. No, of course this won't be the first time they miss the playoffs. That's now going to be a 3rd year of doing that. But to be out of the picture this early, to be out of the picture this far, still almost a couple of weeks away from the NHL trade deadline, yeah, this is different. This is different. And they're going to have to find something because they don't want to allow those collective points of pride that they've been largely responsible for building up and fortifying for all this time. And I'm talking about the core guys. And I'm talking, of course, about the others who've been around for a while, like Brian Rust. They're the ones who have to keep this afloat. They're the ones who have to make sure that there is a bridge to this next generation whenever the team does proceed to get younger, which will hopefully be sooner rather than later. But don't give me this tanking stuff. Listen, I'm going to say this until I'm purple in the face. Not blue, but all the way purple. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. The NHL draft is a crapshoot. Do the best scouting you can, get the player you want, get the right player. If you're picking at 5 or you're picking at 4 or you're praying for a lottery ball, it's not going to make that much difference. It really isn't. Certainly not the kind of difference that it would make if you just completely embarrassed everyone, including the city's hockey fans, the rest of this way. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Gene in San Diego. Gene says, DK Kyle Dubas inherited a lot of goaltenders. He hasn't managed them well. Penguins' 3 legitimate prospects can't stay prospects much longer. Who does he trade or move or waive so that we can see Sergei Murashov, Philip Larson? Waiting until training camp seems insane to me. The first thing I have here for you, Gene, would be a question back, and that's, who do you mean when you say we? I don't know if you mean we as in the Penguins, or whether you mean we as in we the fans, or how that goes. I'm going to be nice when I say this. what the fans want to see for their entertainment value doesn't come close to being a priority as compared to the kid's development. I mean, I'd like to see Murashov right now, too. I'd rather watch him play than any of their current goaltenders, obviously. But that doesn't mean it would be doing right by the kid. Whether it was the correct decision or not, and I think it was not, Murashov's only played 6 games in the AHL. Now, he was borderline perfect in those 6 games, 1.99 goals against, .934 save percentage, 1 shutout. This is just in 6 starts, and he got sent back to Wheeling for some insane reason. But that part's, the figurative water under the bridge, nothing you can do about it. That doesn't mean you go and have him just come up I-79 and make it to Pittsburgh tomorrow. I would like to see him in Wilkes-Barre, as in like 2 weeks ago. But when it comes to Pittsburgh, and really to your broader point, which I thought was excellent, when it comes to the way Dubas has handled goaltending, this is not unique to his tenure in Pittsburgh. I don't talk a lot about his time in Toronto, mostly because I couldn't care less about the Maple Leafs. But he's stated, he has conceded that he has an approach when it comes to that particular position, the most important position in the game, that it's something of a crapshoot from an evaluation standpoint. That's always had me a little uncomfortable, because that is what stats-minded execs say when there aren't enough numerical answers. It's what baseball people say, for example, about relief pitchers. Oh, you just never know. They just change from year to year. And even if it's true, it still makes me a little cringy. I'd like to hear some old school from you in that case. I'd like to hear that you consulted someone who might be, even a generation older, who's got some background in how to recognize goaltending. If you want to go back a little more than 20 years ago to when the Penguins correctly identified the number 5 goaltender on the San Jose depth chart. You know who I'm going to say if you've been around. That was Johan Moose Hedberg. And they identified him because Eddie Johnston went with his human eyes and watched him play in Winnipeg for the Manitoba Moose and said, that's the one. That's the one we have to go after. Penguins got him for a song, of course, and he ended up being not only a playoff hero that spring, knocking off both Olaf Kolzig and Dominik Hasek and almost doing the same to Martin Brodeur, of all people, in the next round. He also went on to have a really nice NHL career. It's okay to talk to these guys. They know what they're watching. They've been doing it their whole lives. And in EJ's case, he played it for a big chunk of his life. You know who else they had as an authority on this? True story, as long as I'm on the Moose thing. Ride with me this morning. We can go a little extra. Penguins had a morning skate. This was in Sunrise, Florida. I was covering this. Near the end of it, none other than Mario Lemieux taking some extra shots on Hedberg, just testing him, seeing what he's got, seeing how he reacts, seeing maybe even how he responds to having, this living legend standing in front of him. Comes off the ice that day, turns to a coach as he's headed down the runway and says, we've got our guy. Moose loses the game that night. Just crushed, devastated. Didn't even earn a stool at a stall in that locker room. He's sitting in the middle of the floor, looked up at me and said, I'm sad. I'll never forget that. One of my favorite quotes I've ever gotten from anybody. I'm sad. They let him play the next game in Tampa, and the rest was history because they already knew what they had. No data, no analytics, no nothing. Maybe get some of that into the mix. I appreciate you, Gene. You know that. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow that probably won't be anywhere near as fun as this one was.